I think the best advice I could give any law firm owner right now is to complete an audit of your firm. Do you own your CRM and your CRM's data? Does your CRM data back up? Can you leverage it? Can you access it? Is it an open API? All of these things are very important as more agentic work starts to be instituted within law firms.
This is the Law Firm Brand Builders Podcast. I'm Al Ludwig, CEO of Practice Made Perfect. And today I have Patrick McEuen on. Patrick, before anyone hears your title or the firm that you work for, I want to put a couple numbers on the board that you said to me. And that was 58% of our cases come from AI right now with attribution. And y'all have had 400% growth since 2023. So you coach football and broke down film. So I'm going to ask you to run the tape on that. How did that happen?
Well, to be completely honest, we had a really great infrastructure set up with a good SEO foundation. And when we really just decided that we were going to go all in on the idea of AI as like an emerging space, we were invested heavily in SEO already. So being able to kind of pivot and start pulling those strings in different areas and what becomes kind of the geo space that's built on top of SEO, that was really the strike. And then me being an enthusiast in the space, we were able to kind of quickly identify ways that we could help, promote our firm and have more authority in the topic to really surface in those AI answers. And that's really been the foundation of it all. And being able to build and expand on top of that. We've built some in-house tools that made it more possible too.
Yeah, we're going to talk about those tools for sure. So 58% of cases from AI right now with attribution.
Yes,
what does that attribution look like?
So we run a blended attribution model here at the firm where we like to do, a 40% to first touch, 40% to last touch. Then we go 20% to brand. So with us, we use various different, offline conversion tracking tools to help us kind of in the ad space. But simultaneously, we also do the same thing as everyone else. We ask our clients. And we'd like to think that the combination of all those tools really give us an edge in being able to identify really where these leads came from. And most people aren't aware, though, you can also export a lot of your website logs. And those queries that the agents are using to get to your website are really, really informative and sometimes can marry up with some of that attribution data you have on your side.
Okay. And when it comes to the client, so it's more like the subjective data, right? I love having that data set in there because I can tell you many times in the past, you ask someone, why'd you contact us or how'd you hear about us? And they'll say something that just can't be true. but you're trying to figure out what was that journey that got them to say that, or they think about a different law firm. But I'm curious how many of them are themselves saying AI or the Google AI overviews or ChatGPT or any of the other LLMs.
So I would say, honestly, for us, it's exactly what you're saying. It's almost like a breadcrumb trail. Well, sometimes we'll have someone come in, they indicate on the web form that they found us via AI, but they converted in a paid ad. And the attribution for us, for the UTM, is organic. And they might have visited Google business page. You're like, oh my gosh, like where and what is getting credit here? And to your point, you kind of have to reverse breadcrumb trail back to really see, okay, this person was in a ChatGPT session, got regurgitated our firm as an answer, then searched us up, found a Google business page, then converted on the ad that was for the brand that was sponsored up at the top of the page. So for us, it's also marrying up that testimony from the client to really say, okay, that makes a lot of sense. And like many other firms, I think we're experiencing an influx in, hey, my case is a locked in, amazing case. Here's everything ChatGPT and Claude told me about why, we've got a slam dunk winner for you. And that usually confirms the AI.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the firm. What's the firm? What's the practice areas? Do you feel like it's working better because of the practice areas that you're going for? And what's the difference compared to maybe some other practice areas where it just might come across differently with AI overviews?
That is honestly a great question. And the one that I usually have to cover with our clients, even on the Esquire engine side, is that because Meyer Wilson Wording, we operate in a very small niche, which is, FINRA and securities arbitration. And our lawyers, there's not that many people that really operate in this niche. But what makes it unique is we can market to all 50 states. So with my marketing budget and a firm of our very small size, of about 15, 16 people, we've got to try and compete nationally. So for us, dipping into the AI and leaning on that was really a priority because ad spend in that space is obviously going to be a little difficult from a budget perspective. So for us, with us already being a niche, I think that benefits us to lean into the AI more. Simultaneously, I think our average client, being either a high net worth individual or an elderly person who has worked their whole life, a retiree who's maybe been scammed by a broker or advisor, they're usually going to go to something like an AI tool for extra insights and help trying to navigate the questions that they have. It's not necessarily the same as getting in a car accident and, the first brand or the first search you're going to do. It's more like, hey, is my broker actually allowed to do this? And really building our website around those types of, top of funnel queries to try and make sure those clients, when they're searching for those answers, they find our confirmation and our support. Hopefully they then follow, the model all the way back to us and get it directly from the source. So I definitely think your practice area really influences how much AI can really drive case generation for you right now.
So say the practice area again, just so everybody has a clear understanding exactly what it is.
Well, it is securities arbitration and litigation. So there's a lot of different phrases for it. We also call it investment fraud litigation, but it really is under those two buckets primarily.
Okay, and so much longer probably discovery phase within that practice area than, as you mentioned, being injured in a motor vehicle accident, or looking for what to do when you're injured at work or need Social Security disability. Would you say that's the case on it?
I'd say definitely. And it's
Yeah.
very unique too, in that it's an arbitration. So it's usually, it's with a panel. It's not with a court. It's not in federal court either most often. So we really have the benefit of it's almost like a different arena, I would argue, versus even our class action cases and our mass tort cases here at the firm.
Okay. So when looking at the total marketing breakdown for the firm for that particular practice area, what does that look like from you? Going as in depth as you want, or keep it top level if you need to, in terms of what you can put out there, what you can't. It's completely up to you, but at least maybe percentage wise, what does a marketing for that look like?
I would say honestly, for us, we're able to lean heavily on almost entirely the budget goes only for the investor claims practice area. I mean, for us, we just believe in the idea that in this age of the internet, a lot of the hyper specific stuff is a little bit less impactful. So just continuing to build our brand and build our authority over the topics that we already have a rich history covering is really just the power of emphasis there. So we're really just trying to make sure that whether it's Google or it's an LLM or whomever, if you have any type of question that relates to the subject area, you need to come back to us. And that's what we really try to prioritize.
And I want to pick your brain regarding the SEO prior to AI, right? And being able to attribute back to AI. Because one thing that I found very helpful when I was in-house 5 years at a large personal injury law firm, and we did a lot of good SEO for years. Granted, we had a large brand, but we basically did good marketing for a very long time, got mentioned a lot everywhere, especially in our local footprint that we wanted to be in, which was primarily one state. And so when the LLMs came along, when AI search and all that came along, we were doing fantastic in it without having an initial focus there. Now, obviously, we were working to kind of hack some of it a little bit, so to speak. Do you feel like y'all had those kind of the blocking and tackling in place? You had 85, 90% of it there already from what you were already doing. And so when it came along, it was just, Meyer Wilson was the one that got the benefit of it because you already had everything for the most part laid out compared to maybe some of your other competitors across the country?
I'd say yes and no. Yes, in that our brand, we're definitely one of the largest brands in our niche. I'd consider us, top 3, top 5 for sure. So I think that's a benefit, an immense one. David has the largest jury verdict in Ohio history. I think some of these things
how much is
benefit.
that?
I think it was 262 million, but it was later reduced on appeal, but we don't put that anywhere on the website.
It all has to go through that. Where I was, I think we had like a $219 million one. And it was like, well, let's talk about that a little bit, right? And
we should absolutely talk about it in the market
and humanize it a little bit too, because there's some bad things going on behind the scenes. If a jury is willing to come back and go, yeah, this is fair.
This is bad. No, I think another thing that's missed a little bit with AI search is just how much, the SEO principles and foundations, as important as they were, I don't necessarily think all of it worked really well in kind of the hybrid model most law firms had of, hey, marketing is the agency. And a good example of that is like directories. where I think directories now in this age of search, Google has to rely on some of these external trust indicators for that authority. So if you
Hmm.
don't have very active directories that, are up to date with your attorneys and their profiles and their years, those trust indicators that both Google and these LLMs rely on, that mismatching data can really just be the difference between the inch between you and competitor two. And that's all the difference. And in our world, one conversion is a big deal. and so we really try to optimize for the best possible percentage across all of these queries of, hey, hopefully you can get your way to us.
So you say one conversion is a big deal. That
Yeah,
tells me that one case carries a high case value. What does it
very
typically
much.
look like in your field?
Well, it's tricky, obviously, I would say. I think every case varies based on like the losses from the client typically. But we can end up, pursuing group cases where if one, financial advisor in Topeka, Kansas has been engaging in fraud and we talk to a victim, they likely know other people at church who were impacted by this affinity fraud scheme that this individual ran. So one call and one client can quickly become 30, where now we have a group case and this is almost like a mass action versus a singular case, and that's really the opportunities that we try to tackle, which is why that nationwide presence is so important, because we do want to know, and we think there's any client that doesn't make their way to us when they have a case like this, we think is in a worse position for sure. So I go
Do you,
all out for it.
do you do any niche advertising when a opportunity comes like that? Maybe you have a client that got affected by this one thing, and it makes you realize, oh, there's possibly dozens or hundreds of these. Or in another way, something's happening regarding a certain situation out there, and so put together maybe a marketing strategy to create the demand about it, because people who don't know that they potentially have been defrauded or have a case, or they can't search for it because they don't know to search for it, right?
And that's where, to your point, like I don't think any law firm in this era can nail themselves down to just one avenue of marketing. You can't just be SEO, you can't just be paid ads, you can't try to be leaning into geo and not, drive referrals also. We absolutely dip our toes into a little bit of the geo specific targeting, try and run, retargeting ads and things like that to try and funnel traffic back. Admittedly, I'm obsessed with call rail. I'm a very big data attribution guy. So I've got hundreds of call rail numbers that we use to really try and trace back all of those leads, whether it's from a direct mail piece, an advertising billboard, whatever it is. That way we know exactly where that call's coming from, and we can route it back all the way to a fee.
One of my least favorite things was the once or twice a year where I would jump into CallRail to do an audit and clean up. Because like I said, I had hundreds of them, right? And it's
Yes.
just it can get messy quick, right? And new tactics, new ideas. You're constantly creating these new campaigns, and so you need the hundreds, if not, I mean, in some cases, thousands, right?
Of numbers. Yeah.
Of numbers going on all at one time. But then, the larger it gets, the more unwieldy it gets. And then you start, if you're anything like me, you start thinking about like, do I just need someone to always be in call?
To be managing just CallRail. I think CallRail is the most underappreciated and underutilized marketing asset in most in-house law firm marketing departments and in collaboration with their vendors. And that data that's lost, it's so important for actually being able to deduce what's happening, because in most law firms, their marketers get half the story of just what the impressions and the things that they're doing are. But the firm knows which ones are converting to clients, which paths are actually, tracing back to a conversion. But usually no one's integrated CallRail into the CRM. So one of the most impactful things we were able to do was set up an LLM number pool to try and track all of those conversions coming in via CallRail. And then being able to start, we set up a data lake to start marrying up a lot of those GSC queries with our Google Analytics data, and then pulling that together to really try and path how are these leads converting into cases, and which ones are most impactful that drive the outcomes we want. And then you add in a little bit of financial forecasting, a little projected acquisition value, a little cost per acquisition. You can very efficiently see, which of your marketing vendors are driving the outcomes that your firm cares about. And that made me a big data guy, because I'm by nature, I don't think I'm a marketer, to be honest. A little bit too much of like a numbers and tech guy, but
Yeah.
having really talented marketers to handle that while I handle the data is a good dynamic duo, I'd like to think.
I like that you brought up the people, because you had one LinkedIn post. So I'm pulling a quote here. Well, for me, you're one of the most aggressive AI adopters that I probably know, just from my research on you, our general discussions, how you're implementing it from a data set within the firm. But you have the post on your LinkedIn built around your people, not the fancy features. And you talked a lot about, when people ask you, how do you do it all? Right. And you're like, well, it's not the AI, it's the people. Can you talk to me a
Yes.
little bit about that and how it integrates all together?
Absolutely. I think this is the thing I might be most passionate about. I'm a little a crazy guy a little bit. I post memes about it of being the Charlie Day thing, but I'm so passionate about the idea that most law firm owners, I think when I talk with them, have an idea that AI might be able to supplement or replace people either that are external vendors currently or people they're considering bringing in-house someday. And my advice is always that is a terrible idea. I do not think we're there yet, but I do think AI right now in the right tools can take, it's like an Iron Man suit, where that person that might have one task that they're good at that they usually do, and by augmenting them in this way, they can suddenly do a lot more things and are a lot more capable in cross and upskilling into other areas. That's really what I think is most important. Is I think too often tech tools and the priorities of the technology come before the people. And here we build our intake page layouts based on what the paralegal wants, based on practice area. We just try to be that specific and make the technology work with the users, not the users work with the technology. It's a big ethos of mine of, I say this sometimes and it comes off a little derogatory, but I swear it's not. But end users are like water, where at the end of the day, like our paralegals, they don't care about my checklist about what you're supposed to be doing in the CRM. They care about their client and their cases, and I want them
Yeah.
to. So that means it's on me to work with our team to design a system that makes it as easy as possible for them to do their job. Because they're like water. When they've got a deadline, when there's a big filing that's coming up, they're not thinking about, hey, can you save this over here and name it this way? I got to make that a requirement.
Yeah. And I feel like in many fields, and I think uh, the legal space is one of them where, you're working for and with people. And so those relationships are super important. I think people are getting scared that AI is going to replace a lot of the work that's there, and surely it will. Um, but for me, it makes things quicker. It lets your people do more things at one time. It lets them focus on the things that the AI can't do. The maintaining of those relationships, the talking to the clients, the things that might have been very hard for a paralegal to do on a regular basis as often as they want it because they were too busy with the admin work that goes on behind the scenes and all the paperwork and keeping the CRM up to date with every single little nuance, right? That now is kind of being able to get automated through the connections of the email and reports, and being able to, for me, the biggest time saver has been just being able to dictate so much.
Yes.
Because I can't keep up with my brain.
I agree completely.
And so I type a lot, right? But I hate typing, and I'd rather just say things in the way that I mean for them to be interpreted or listened
Yeah.
to, and get the nuance of every little stumble I have, right? Every little pause I have, where I can't do that when I'm typing, right? Because when I'm typing, it's going to come across a lot more polished, maybe a little more thought out. But I like capturing the journey of me thinking it out all the way to that last bit, and being able to dictate and use that to build systems, to build tools, to work with the team internally. I mean, it's been a just absolute game changer on my end.
I can't agree more. Honestly, for us, one of the biggest impacts in using AI in different ways is using our voice. Because to your point, the way you talk and all that nuance that's lost between my polished, perfect thing that I gave the LLM or the AI is where you lose its ability to kind of understand exactly where your head was going, potential pitfalls you ran into, even when articulating what you wanted. It's more in line with what you really need, and you get better results as a result. So, I mean, I can't agree more.
I'll stop myself halfway down a rabbit hole and go, wait, no, let's back up, let's reverse. But you see where I was going with that one, right? But let's go now in this direction. And that's all captured. And
it's great. It's great context for the model to be able to expand on why you might have diverted away from the rabbit hole, and you're encoding strategic elements of your thought process. And when we're talking about these modern orchestrator models, like that's everything in terms of then You could prompt to say, hey, save that as a skill file. There's a lot
Yeah,
of really cool things in
100%.
progress.
And my team has told me numerous times, they're like, we've come to understand you talk your way through things. And so initially in a meeting with me, if someone's not familiar, they may think like I am just rolling, dictating, telling them what to do, where we need to, and then they start realizing, no, he's just working himself to a destination that he knows there that he hasn't quite got to yet.
He's talking himself through it. That's the best way to describe it.
And with AI, I'm able to just do that nonstop, right? And I absolutely love doing it. But I want to jump on to a couple other things. One's a very simple quote that I pulled from your LinkedIn: firm owned, period, all caps, firm owned, period.
I can dive into this a little bit. So this is just a personal story from our firm. So when I joined the firm about 5 years ago, I came in originally as David's assistant. So I was like getting coffees, I was picking up lunches, and I was just trying to be a sponge and learn everything I could to help him. And primarily at that time, it was tech. The firm post-COVID, like everybody else, we suddenly had to figure out e-sign, Zooms, all that, and it was a little crazy there for a minute. But David, at that time, we were going through a marketing transition, and our previous vendor owned our Google Ads account. And long story short, millions of dollars in Google Ads data we lost when we transitioned. And, having to start a ads account over and retroactively, you can't reach back out like, hey, actually, could we get a copy of that? It doesn't really work like that. So experiencing that and then going into meetings with potential Esquire clients where they really don't own anything. They don't really know where their directories are managed. They don't know where their Google business pages are. They're not aware of their tag managers, their analytics accounts, their call rail accounts even. All that data in this era of AI is how you're able to then capture and build upon what's functioned and worked inside your firm. I jokingly say it's like your operating memory. Like you have vendors who are extensions of you, and you have outcomes that you get to absorb. But the how is in this era of AI is how you can, internalize some of those resources and leverage AI yourself, and not have that gap. But if you don't have the data, that's not an option for you. And that's where, when I meet with firm owners and I find out that they have 70% of their stuff they're not really aware, they don't even know, and even their in-house marketers don't know, it makes me panic because I'm just like, you don't know what you're dealing with here.
Yeah, and at a minimum, just being aware that
Yes.
I need to have the access to all of these items, and knowing that somebody has it, is better than most. When I was in house, one of the first things I did was I audited everything that we had working with anybody externally. I want to own everything, and we spent millions and millions of dollars every single year. And with one of the vendors, it was, well, we don't really do it like that. I'm like, well, we are going to do it like that, right?
Yeah.
Like we're going to do it like that now. Otherwise, like I'm going to have to start finding other solutions. And, so they were like, okay, no, absolutely. We'll do it that way. Right. I'm not looking to get in there and kick y'all out. I'm looking to get in there and just make sure that the firm has ownership of the things that they need, that we have access to, and everything's transparent as possible. And so, I think not every agency out there is going to do that. Right. But if you spend enough, a lot of them will make some concessions. And I'm a big advocate of that transparency. I want them to have access to everything. I want them to be able to look at it whenever they want, if they decide they want to. Because ultimately, if they don't, then there's probably a little less trust there, because it is black boxed a little bit. And, when they do decide, to shop around, I have no idea, because no one has their team doesn't have access to it, right? And so it could be a catch-22 for some agencies, but I'm a big advocate of just I want the firms to be as knowledgeable and equipped as possible to know what's going on with their law firm, with the marketing, because I want them to look at me as a true partner, right?
For sure. And I think most agencies, especially the really good ones, they're excited when you bring up these questions. When you start asking these types of questions, like, okay, someone internally now can start closing some loops for us too. And I mean, I'm speaking from experience. A lot of our growth comes in working with an agency. I like to tell people, sure, I have a horror story about one, but David Meyer, he's the investor protector. We get hundreds of calls every single month from people who've been defrauded by brokers and advisors. But every single one of us here has a broker and advisor, because it's the same way if you work in the emergency department, you probably think your kid should never go to a park ever. There's very much an experience where, because of the sample size, you can give you an idea that you should never do that. But I think the best agencies get excited, and a lot of our growth has come from working with our agency for how to integrate our strategy and use them as a true extension of us. And I think that gray area of a lot of law firms thinking it's the agency's job, the agency kind of being like, we can't do everything, is where that friction comes in. But if you're replacing your agency every year, you're never going to make any momentum or progress because you don't have consistency either. And that's where I think a lot of firms end up in a cyclical cycle of they're both not committing themselves or investing in equal resources that the agency can, so that the both can meet in the middle and find success together.
And it's crazy, the makeup of so many different law firms, right? And they're going to be completely different because they're different sizes, different practice areas, different interests, right? Some of them just don't want to be involved in any of the marketing ever, right? And they're okay with being in a black box because they're just like, as long as the results are happening, fine, right? And if they're not, we're going to go somewhere else. From the agency standpoint, very much when there is someone internally who is owning it from the bringing everything together, it's better for every agency you work with. And that was one of the conversations when I was in house that I had, even when I was talking about the agency, a couple of agencies I was working with. It was, if they're good at what they do, they're just going to be better now that I'm here, right? Because they're going to have more direction. They're going to have more access into what's really happening behind the scenes. They're going to know what I'll hold valuable, what I don't, because they will never have full access to the complete nuance of all the clients coming in and what's happening in intake, what's happening in legal ops and in operations, because they can't, right? It's just that they're a separate business, no matter how much you integrate your agency in. But we do work with some firms that, we are their marketing department and their marketing agency. But trust has to come with that in order for that to happen, right?
And I think, to your point, like, that bridge is so important of being able to bridge what's going on inside of the firm with what the agency is doing and marrying those things together, because one side knows the outcomes and the other side kind of is implementing strategy. So the bridge is really important. One of the biggest things we felt like helped us was providing like a neutral place to share data, even to where, to your point, I'm not giving any agency access to my CRM. And if that's my system of truth, how can I provide them that access? It's one of the reasons why we made a data lake as a neutral place to be like, hey, here's your data vendor. Here's your data vendor. You can see how many of these we're turning down, why, our disqualification reasons, and that can help inform either your ad strategy, your SEO strategy. And it just goes a long way in helping produce better results for everyone.
Yeah. And ultimately, what I'm hearing there is a very clear, here is your metrics and here's how I'm judging you. And so make sure that you're operating through that lens. And whether the agency or the vendor or the third party partner agrees with that or not, they know that's how they're being judged, right? And if they don't agree with it, you can have those conversations. I've had many of those conversations where it's like, well, maybe we shouldn't be judged off of that thing, because here's some of the, for me, that's the advantage of having been in-house too, because I'm still always thinking from that in-house standpoint, because I had to do what you did, right? I had to share lots of data in a way that made sense, vendor by vendor, client, agency by agency. And there were lead gen vendors, there were true agency vendors, there were freelancers. There's a lot
of
bring
coordination
together all in one place to try to go up and to the right.
I do think one of the most difficult parts for me is also making sure, like, what matters to us when I'm working with the marketing vendor and what is important to strategy is not what the firm owners are necessarily worried about. So, like, to your point, it's like translating the marketing results that, like, we care about, the firm owners don't necessarily care that much about. And then also simultaneously the things the firm owner wants me to pass down, maybe sometimes not, letting it distract away from the good things that we got.
Yeah. You have to be a buffer, right?
Yeah, 100%.
You don't always want you don't want the team to be stressed out by the owner's stress, because the owner's going to be stressed in a different way because it's their operation. And if they're anything like me, I had the tendency to operate under the world is always burning.
Yeah.
Things are going up and to the right. And I'm still like, but what if? Uh, and so I know a lot of operators, a lot of owners, they also think like that because they have uh, a large team that is counting on them. They have these personal relationships, and they don't ever want, things to go south. They want everybody to eat, so to speak, and
Especially
that's
in
a
a
lot to carry.
contingency fee firm. I mean, it really is. There's so much variance in knowing when cases are going to settle, which ones are going to get thrown out. Like, financial forecasting, even in the best case scenarios in most contingency fee firms, is kind of like a really rough estimate, and because it's just the reality of the business. But I
The
think,
larger you get, the more volume you do, the easier that gets.
sure, yeah, definitely larger sample
But
size.
I mean, you're a $1 to $10 million firm, much more difficult.
That's what the peace of mind has to come from, the consistency in the processes and in the reporting and the trend that you can hopefully see in the data of being confident in kind of what you're building towards. Because I will admit, and this is something I'm very candid with people, we started our AI journey in 2022, where we first started, we had a crawler that we were using that was really the origin of the idea of what became our tools. But when ChatGPT comes out, it's like, okay, we spend, 23 and 24 really building the foundation of both the tools and our strategy. And it wasn't until 25 and 26 that we really started to see those efforts pay off. Now, I think that's two things. I think it's us kind of actually getting our arms around it. But the second thing being that more people are using AI for more stuff. I know Google announced last month, that they're pushing everything into AI mode now. I think you're
Mhm.
going to see more social media platforms push LLMs into their integrated search features. So a lot of these agent to agent handoffs between platforms, that optimization layer is just getting a larger surface area.
Yeah, I mean, and even this morning, I was watching a YouTube, or I found a YouTube video by searching for some stuff that I wanted to do a deeper research on. And when I got there, I clicked the little button that does the AI summary of the video that Google and YouTube now have in there, and I went and I quickly read that because I didn't want to watch the video. I
Yeah,
just wanted to know what those takeaways were, and that's a space where the tool is pretty interesting to me because it's almost taking away from the reason why you would go to YouTube. But I personally love being able to just click that button and see it. Right.
I do too, honestly. And I personally, when I'm looking for a business, if they do have a bunch of bad Yelp reviews or Reddit reviews online, I want to know too. And yeah, I'm glad that Google is alerting me of that in my Google business page. No, I'm glad that if there's negative sentiment out there, it gives me that warning when I'm on something like ChatGPT. I think as a consumer, it's just the reality is that AI is putting a lot, it's democratizing a lot of knowledge and making the consumer far more informed. Example I have is I was getting quotes for new gutters on my place. And I was actually able to, based on the quote I was sent by the contractor, identify the actual SKU model from where she was buying the parts from. And I asked him if he'd be willing to just pay the labor. I'll buy the parts myself because I was able to see his exact margin. He didn't respond, but I mean, that type of process is what I think. I think that type of process is what is going on across the whole industry of whether you are a landscaper or a gutter guy or a lawyer. There's now another place where a consumer can hopefully be a little bit more informed coming in those conversations. And for some instances, that's a problematic thing or not ideal. But in some cases for us, like the conversions that we do get from AI are people that are very basically qualified. By the time they get to us, they've spent so much time with this
Yeah.
chatbot that we really are the best choice for them. And that to me is the coolest signal of AI is that when you do get these cases, that they're good. In terms of our we have an internal case rating system that we leverage, and they are consistently our best value proposition cases so far this year. And that's very exciting to me as it's an expanding kind of search area.
So, curious question for you.
Yes, sir.
When you bring on a client that came through some type of, or at least there's some research through AI, have you've ever asked that particular client to send you, if they're willing, their AI research so that you have the full scope of exactly everything that they were looking for so you can best serve them as their lawyer?
We've not actually requested the logs or anything like that. There's also a bit of a nuance, I would say, also in how much they've shared with the chatbot that we don't want them to be doing. So there's
Mhm.
a piece of that too that it makes us a little nervous.
Yeah.
But we basically asked, hey, how did you get here? Can you walk us through that process? And what we found actually is we've seen a rise of it's people's children or their son or their nephew that is doing additional research as well on their situation. And it was the kid in college that was like, hey, actually, grandma, I'm going to run this through. I want to see what ChatGPT says who you should go with versus, the more legacy forms of reaching out and trying to find someone.
Well, Patrick, so your AI scores are low. Do you want a free audit?
My AI score is very low, according to SEMrush and RFs.
I saw your post about, kind of constantly getting hit up with that, right?
Yeah.
What would you tell someone who's being approached with a LinkedIn DM or a vendor that's just, hey, your AI score is low. Do you want a free audit?
I would take it with a mountain of salt, just from the lens of me personally. And I'd like to say, like you said, I'm a little bit of an optimist in this space and trying to optimize for it. I would say that those are just anxiety dashboards right now. Even the highest volume of testing that you can really do for LLMs, you're getting such a sliver. It'd be like trying to estimate the population of deer in Ohio based on how many you saw on your neighbor's trail cam last night. I mean, it really is such a shot in the dark. I think the broader thing that it's opening up people's eyes to is there's a lot of stuff that agencies or your internal marketers could be doing that could be helping. I think as much as a lot of the SEO industry likes to dunk on these geo guys, they are pointing out some of the things that could be better. Structured data on websites. I'm not a big LLMs.txt guy, but I will say your directories are very important. Having an active Google My Business page is very important. All of these things, some of those tips and tricks, there is some nuggets of value in there. So I want to at least give credit where it's due.
Yeah, and I'm with you there. I typically, if Google says something's important, well, no matter what we think, we might as well just do the housekeeping of that thing. You mentioned LLMs, TXT files, where it's like everybody kind of said it does nothing, and then all of a sudden, even Google says it pretty much does nothing, and then they put it into their
To do it.
their guidelines that where like when you run an audit, they're checking for it.
And to me, there's also a piece I've always felt like with Google, where sometimes their instructions aren't always what's accurate to what would be best overall for your firm.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely think an LLM.txt file, there's no harm in putting it on your website by any means. But I wouldn't say that just doing that, you're going to suddenly see this huge influx in AI traffic in cases. And that's where I think the misalignment comes in with some of the LinkedIn DMs I get.
And especially firms that they have a 4.3 rating and 76 reviews, right? They have 10 bad Yelp reviews and 4 good ones. The LLMs are going to be hard pressed to ever say that you're the go-to one unless you're a very niche firm in a very small market and there's just no competition around you, which is going to rarely be the instance in the legal space, especially as we continue building and getting more money into legal marketing, and we get into PE-backed firms, we're getting into MSO, ABS, all of that. How do you feel like that's affecting your world right now?
We're lucky enough that we are niche enough that I don't think there is as big of a private equity, ad margin collapse situation. But I've worked with firms that, a year ago were getting 3 times as many cases for a third of the cost that they are right now. And in the paid ad space, depending on your metro, so one of these private equity backed firms could back up and overnight, if 65, 85% of your cases come from paid ads, that margin collapse is real. I feel very fortunate that we're not as much concerned about it in our position, but I do think it's opened up the door for a lot of us marketers who aren't getting into that space, either soliciting or competing. The more we can all be sharing notes and helping each other out, I'm all for helping cultivate that community. I really appreciate through CRISP, actually, in some of these coaching programs, you can meet and connect with other marketers and try and help hold the line a little bit together.
Yeah, I like how you brought up kind of if you depended on one thing like Google Ads, right? It's just getting more expensive, and the more money flowing into the legal marketing space from the outside, the more expensive that's going to get. And they're doing things that I was doing without PE backing. I had happened to work at a firm that was just very successful, had a lot of cash flow, had great budgets, and so and did complete marketing ecosystem marketing, right? To where if any one channel didn't do great, you didn't necessarily see it in the end result of the number, right? Because that all worked
Evens
together.
out.
And so when I looked at, say, Google Ads or pay per click, it was, I already know that these are going to be probably my most expensive cases to get, because it's bottom of the funnel people with the search intent. It's auction based. We're in a highly competitive field and a highly competitive markets. And so it became, well, can this just be a place where we're generating cases, but not worrying so much about the ROI within this specific channel? And so that channel became, hey, let's squeeze people out. Let's make it hard for people to play in Google Ads in our markets, because we're willing to bid so high for at least the bottom of the funnel intent search phrases. And it's definitely what I saw over the years is a lot less people played in our markets because we did that. Now
Defensive marketing.
We spent a pretty penny doing it, right?
but it worked,
and yeah, it may have brought in a case for $8,000 that we only made $9,000 off of, but then we also had that person in the pipeline. We had that person as a case referred down the line, and 25% of people from that channel referred people down the road, and now the lifetime value of that person is much, much higher, even though we didn't necessarily see the ROI on them on paper that particular year. And so that makes it hard for, smaller spenders, smaller players, because, they need those 3 cases that come from Google Ads that month to give them a 3x, a 4x ROI, and not a 1.1.
Which is, and to me, the defensive marketing, that's a genius idea of being able to, and to your point, the lifetime value, they're going to refer more cases, even if that one case, doesn't end up being the marker. But I think defensive marketing, there are firms that, they'll buy all the billboards in their metro, not because, they're putting call rail numbers on it and they're getting cases, but just so someone else can't.
There's only so many of them, right?
Yeah, exactly. All the billboards, give me all of them.
I think for the firms that can afford it, and are continuing to be privately owned, it's still a good play, even with the money coming from the outside, because these firms are going to be very much focused on general business principles, right? They're going to be focused on a cost per acquisition. And if they're not getting that cost per acquisition out of a specific market, they're going to lower their bids. They're going to maybe get out of doing that particular thing in that market, because they're looking at it from the straight business lens. And so it's another way, defensive marketing. Once you're at a certain place to be able to afford it, it's a good play, especially in a field like, maybe not every legal field, but if it's personal injury, it makes sense, because there is, so much margin there, and the potential for even greater margin if you're able to get the big cases.
And there's so much competition. And to your point, if there's only so many cases and there's that much competition, being able to be defensive really is beneficial, of just depleting the opportunities of what are your competitors in your market, even if sometimes they're your friends. That is the unique part I think about legal. Is a lot of the people you're hanging out with at the BBA is, the guy you're competing with in Google Ads.
That is a fun aspect about the industry, because everybody thinks everybody's enemies from the outside looking in. When I was in-house, we worked with another prominent law firm that was a large competitor of ours on some things that we both had an interest in, and we brought their clients to our studio. And the client, they didn't realize they were going to our studio. When they showed up, they're like, "Wait, this can't be the right place." And they started talking to me about this, like, I thought they were mortal enemies. And then they show up and they're joking around, they're chatting. And it's like, it's like-minded people that do, a similar thing, that just happen to have competing businesses. And ultimately, there's enough to go around. And a lot of them are friends.
Yes. And that's definitely true for the attorneys at my firm. I would say both David and Courtney and Matt, most of the people that you would think are, the biggest competitors that we just can't stand them. They are some of their closest friends that they've worked with for 15, 20 years, and they'll co-counsel cases together. I think it's one of the coolest parts of legal is it's
Yeah.
very much, it's kind of like
And
the NBA. We're in a game. The guys look like they hate each other. And afterwards they're all dapping each other up and they're going to go get drinks after.
the
It's just
the
crazy.
the smartest firms out there are building those relationships even with their competitors, and at some times, as you mentioned, bringing them in to co-counsel, especially on the very large cases, because in many instances it's better to have that third or fourth opinion and do a fee split with them to make sure that everything's going right and we're getting the best value out of this for our client or the best verdict than it is to try to just keep it all in house, even if you have a team that's fully capable. Because someone who's been doing it for 30 years, that's a competitor of yours, they're going to bring in a perspective that maybe you didn't have. And
For sure.
the firms that realize that a partnership like that is more advantageous than adversarial, or firms that win big.
And to your point, I think it comes back to so much of this industry is built on relationships. I mean, legal itself is so social proof and peer driven because of the relationship aspect of it that I genuinely believe that it's very unique in that sense versus many other industries. I mean, I'm not going to pretend I've worked in a ton of them, but just from the outside looking in and my personal experiences, I would say it's very unique to us. I personally enjoy it a lot because you can go to these conferences and see these people and it's much more tangible and interactive than a lot of the corporate experience I had at larger institutions.
Yeah. Well, I guess before we wrap up, tell me, exactly what is Esquire Engine? Who does it help? And how does it help them?
Yeah. So working here at Meyer Wilson Warning, I've been very impassioned by. I feel like a lot of law firm owners, as I mentioned, they don't necessarily understand how much right now with what's happening with AI is opening up new opportunities for firm-owned infrastructure and really trying to arm law firm owners for this next era of what's coming within legal as things shift and move around. So we've developed some tools in-house that we're starting to share with other law firms to help them bring in the AI search components and try and help have a little bit more of autonomy in the driver's seat on the marketing side of the house. So we do a little bit of consulting, and we've really just tried to help through other firms of David's, friends of his, and other people we've met through CRISP, just really help other firms out and get a handle on those things.
And this is something that you feel can help a law firm of any practice area?
Yeah, definitely. We've worked with clients that are, as large as 100 plus, individuals, 6+ offices. We've worked in different states, personal injury firms, defense firms. We can help you out, definitely. And I think that one of the most unique things about what's going on right now is how much of it isn't necessarily just strategy. It's that ownership piece and that ownership conversation of infrastructure and planning for the next wave.
Love it. All right. Well, last piece of advice you want to give to all the law firms out there in the current state of the legal world, legal marketing, legal operations.
Take an ownership test, kind of like what you talked about. You said when you first got in there, you took stock of exactly how many accounts we had, how many vendors, and who owned what. I think the best advice I could give any law firm owner right now is to complete an audit like that of your firm, of your infrastructure. Do you own your CRM and your CRM's data? Does your CRM data back up? Can you leverage it? Can you access it? Is it an open API? All of these things are very important as more agentic work starts to be instituted within law firms. It's the best advice I think I could give right now.
I think it's great. It's great advice. A little mix of marketing and operations and just bringing everything together.
It's all data, right? All flows
data
together. Marketing to fees.
I appreciate everything, Patrick, man. I don't want to hold you up any longer, let you get back to doing the good work you're doing. But thanks for so much for coming in and sharing everything.
Thanks for inviting me on. This has been fantastic. Love nerding out and, look forward to seeing the episode up. Thanks for having me on.